Hey there, Joe here. Welcome back. We both know why we're here. Let's get started. To make the wig cap and wefts, these are the items you're going to need. A mesh material or a lace, elastic, thread, needle, star of the show, which is the water-soluble embroidery stabilizer. Last but not least, your hair fibers. And I'd just like to give Coco81 a huge shout out and a big thanks for sending me the Culture Japan hair fibers that I wasn't able to get when they released. However, they sent to me in the hopes that I would work with them and show you guys the whole process. Big thank yous. This video wouldn't be a reality without you, so thank you. Alright, with that being said, we're all ready to jump in. Now, for your hair, before cutting, you have to take into consideration the fact that whatever length you cut will be cut down in half as you make your wefts. So keep that in mind. So whatever measurement you want your hair to be, make sure you double that when cutting the hair so you maintain that length once the wefts are made. So once I cut, I give it a quick brush and I tie it right at the middle. Then I'll go ahead and get my water-soluble interfacing and then I cut it in half since I'll be making two different strips of wefts using these. I get to sewing right away, but as you can see, I am making them very thick. This led to my hair fibers being too heavy and very thick at the base of the weft. So don't do this. I ended up doing a stitch down the middle, two on the side, zigzag stitch on both sides of those first initial stitches, folded it over, stitched over it again, and then I ended it with a serging, which made the wefts be super thick at the base and also super heavy since I packed a lot of hair into them when stitching them at the first step. So as my clueless self presses on, I also managed to mess up how I removed the water-soluble stabilizer. I sprayed water on, which ended up dissolving into the hair fibers, getting it dirty, and it led me to having to wet it even more and kind of rinse them out. So a part of this does help the fibers since that soluble stuff gets in there and strengthens the weft. So we do kind of want some of that, but for it to get in between the fibers causes it to dry like gel, like hardened gel. So once you finish your wefts, sew them on and bam, here's your wig. Totally kidding. I just want to draw a quick comparison between my first Mirai wig, and as you can see, the Culture Japan fibers are way nicer, higher quality, and have a gray tint to them, while the other one has like this greenish glow to it. I totally prefer the Culture Japan ones. With that out of the way, it's time to get started on our wig cap. Go ahead and grab your elastic and make sure that you pull it until there's a snug fit around the head, but not enough for it to cause tension that could make the wig fly off. Once you do that, go ahead and hand stitch it. Give it a good amount of stitches to make sure it's secure and doesn't fall apart. Once you do that, you're all set to put on the fabric, your mesh or lace, put your elastic over it, and you'll get this sort of look, and just make sure you have enough seam allowance all around before you cut, and once you cut, you're ready to start sewing. So as you thread your needle, go ahead and pull it through that little loop before you pull it all the way through, and that will be your little anchoring stitch, and we're going to keep repeating this process as you make your stitch. Pull your stitch through, pull the thread over the needle, and pull. Stitch through, thread over the needle, and pull. Stitch through, thread over the needle, and pull. This is kind of like that impromptu blanket stitch, but it's not really a blanket stitch since it's not at the edge of a blanket. But you know, this is the easiest way to explain the type of stitch I'm using, and if you don't want to do that, just go ahead and do running stitches, but every once in a while just secure it with a little back stitch. Once you're done, go ahead and cut out all the X's, secure any loose areas, and you are all set to start sewing your wefts. To sew on the wefts, we're going to do the same stitch. We're going to do a starter stitch, running through the little threads and pull the way through. Then we're going to continue with the other blanket stitches and work our way all around. As for placement of the weft, I like to keep it directly above the elastic, not interfering with the elastic casing, just directly above, and then starting to work my way all around. The best tip I can give to prevent your doll from getting poked or scratched is to just move at your own pace, don't rush it, and just be meticulous with your stitches. So once your weft reaches the other end, you're going to go ahead and start spiraling a little bit up. Since these wefts were very heavy and very full of hair, I spaced it out a lot and ended up backfiring in more than one ways, which I'll get into a little later. So once I finish a single layer, I like to braid it just to help me get the hair out of the way when I'm turning the head and sewing. It really helps. And don't forget to use your protection or you will get blisters like I did. So once you sew your way to the top, it's time to add a few stitches to secure everything and start rolling out the topper. So the rolled topper is what I call it. It's just like a rolled weft that you just add stitches into and you roll it while adding stitches and referencing back to your wig to make sure the topper fits that hole. So the stopper, all I do is stitch one side and then the other side of the weft and then pull it, and it kind of just starts rolling onto itself. This is what it looks like once it's done and you're ready to attach it to the wig. So to sew on the topper, I like to start off by adding a few anchoring stitches to just kind of anchor them together as one, and then I work my way around by zigzagging back and forth between the weft and the topper. but I don't pull all the way tightly because this is what gives me the room to make the stitches. It's a really small space, and since these wefts ended up being a little thicker than expected, it was a little tougher to run my needle through. So I did kind of need to do these loose stitches at first and then tighten them by pulling at the end after doing a few. And then I just worked my way around until I finished, and then this is kind of how it looks before we do our water wash. Before your boil wash, make sure you position your fibers how you want them to set. So a quick tip for those of you who don't have any stand for your wig, I like to use a wine bottle. I know it's super random, but I put it on there, and then it even air dries on there, so it's a perfect fit. Boiling water, and then I put cold water over it to kind of set it in place so it doesn't kind of move around and shift as it cools and change the intended shape. Once it's air dried, go ahead and give it a good little comb, and we're all set to start cutting. So the tools you're gonna need are a comb, razor brush, and some scissors. Now before you cut, go ahead and section off all the hair you want to use for the bangs. It includes the front, the side bangs, and everything. Also, make sure you double check and make sure that all the hair is positioned to the front and is only from the front, and don't bring forward any hair from the back that could throw off the balance of the little hair topper we made. Once you do that, go ahead and section off an equal amount from each side of the bangs. These will be the side bangs, and I just like to put little rubber bands on them and just section them off and move them to the side until I'm done with the front. So to cut, I kind of use the razor brush to kind of do an even marking throughout the bangs so I can cut them. And with that excess amount, I save it for whatever I need it in the future. And then I kind of go in and start blending off pieces of the bangs. I just grab little chunks throughout the bangs, both of them equally, and then I just kind of use the razor brush to kind of hack away and blend it down. Then I go in with the hair straightener to just kind of give me an idea of how the bangs are kind of curl into themselves after I do the boil wash, just to make sure I don't cut too much or leave them too long. Once the front bangs are done, you're set to start working on the side bangs. Grab the side pieces and then bring them to the front, and I like to cut them like one at a time, and then I match the other one. So to trim them, I like to cut them at an angle on both sides while simultaneously turning the hair a little bit here and there to make sure that the cuts are distributed and in a way that makes it appear blended. Close up, they look a little like this. After cutting, I like to go through the hair again with the mini iron, just like the bangs, just to make sure that the length curls up nicely how I want it to be and it rests where I like it. And then I took this chance to add another set of side bangs, but these are a little longer and they end at her thigh, and they just look the same. They're made the same, but they're just like a little lower. So at this point, while I'm styling the bangs, I realized that the topper is a little too big, and that's definitely due to the wefts being not only too thick, but also a little too long. So what I do to fix it is add some tension by stitching down the end of the weft onto the other weft and just building some tension to kind of pull it down. However, that wasn't enough, and there was still a lot of that spacing coming through. So this is where I get the great idea to go back and get those bangs that we cut off of Mariah, as you can see, these, and then I start making new wefts. In doing so, I discovered the best way to make wefts, so those of you that stuck around and are still here are in for a treat. It's the same method. To start off, we sew down the middle of the wefts onto the water-soluble stabilizer, and then we comb it and sew on both sides. A big part of this is the fact that I'm using way less hair. Once you do that, go ahead and fold it over, pin it in place. This will just help you keep everything intact and in an organized manner, and stitch it down. The secret to this is stitching down the edge over and over and over and over again until none of the hairs can be pulled out. The best way to do this is to backstitch while you're stitching and just doing it continuously over and over and over again until the hair can't be pulled out. This actually results in really thin wefts and really small, width of the weft as well. Once you're done, you'll end up with something like this, which is a really nice weft. It's thin, secure, and ready to install. Now, I also thought of a different method to remove the stabilizer on these wefts. All I did was pull it away from the hair, wet it, trim it off, and then rinse the wefts, and you're all set. It's a lot quicker and super easy to do. Talk about learning from experience, right? Once they're all set, give them a good little comb, and we're ready to install them. So this one goes directly next to the topper, and it's that little part that was kind of peeking through, that was showing a lot of the openness. And then we add some right above the center of our bangs, and since it's not too full of hair, it won't be too difficult to kind of blend into the rest of them, so it wasn't too much. I also made a quick decision to remove some of the wefts from the back. It was just one little layer just to kind of balance out the weight, since it was starting to be very heavy. And now it's time to fix the bangs once again, since we added hair and they're all long again, but this time I took the opportunity to add another set of side bangs bangs, and these are meant to cuff the face. They're done the same way we did the other ones, but they're just really short. Now that we're all set, it's time for the final foil wash, and this time for the final one, I like to use a blank head that I have. That way the bangs kind of mold to the head of a smart doll, so when the wig goes to dry and cool down, it maintains that form and it fits perfectly over the forehead, as you can see right now on Mariah. If you're going to be making wigs, I do recommend you keep a spare head around, that way you can go ahead and use it whenever you need it. And after all that hard work, go ahead and give yourself a pat on the back and have a much deserved pie break. Alright, and that's enough pie, and back to work. As you can see, all of the little gaps are kind of filled in completely, so it's all set from the top, and I just need to go ahead and go through her hair and curl the ends and make it really presentable and cute.
Ladies and gentlemen, her.
Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate your support. If you learned anything new or enjoyed the video, please show it some love. It helps us immensely. See you next time.